Hi, my name is James Ramsey, and I'm the product manager for the source code and Gitaly groups. And this is the 12.5 kickoff call. The source code and Gitaly teams are part of the create stage of the DevOps lifecycle. And you can check out the kickoff calls for each other group and each other stage in this YouTube playlist. There are two items in 12.5 that are continuing from 12.4, which relate to improving the performance and scalability of the merge request page. The merge request page is very important for nearly every single one of our customers because the majority of our customers use the merge request page for code quality, doing code reviews of changes before they merge, and also for using CI. That merge requests are where the CI results happen for feature branches. And so making sure that merge requests are fast, responsive, and work well for merge requests of all shapes and sizes is really important. And so what we began doing in the previous release is tackling one of the biggest performance problems, well, the biggest remaining performance problem that we'd identified, which is how the diffs in the changes tab are loaded. So we have tackled that by breaking apart the request to retrieve that information from the server into multiple parts. And the first aspect was changing how we download the list of changed files to populate the file tree and provide other kinds of statistics in the merge request. So we've implemented that API as part of this change, which we've been working on in 12.4, and the interface work is continuing, and we expect that to be completed quite soon, early in the 12.5 development period. The other aspect is loading the diff contents themselves. So that is the syntax highlighted summary of the changes. Currently, we load that all in one giant response to the interface. And when there's 100 files changed and 10 files in each of them, the response is large. It's over a megabyte, often multiple megabytes. And this means that the page doesn't really have any useful information until all of that data is downloaded, and then there's quite a long wait while that is rendered to the screen. And so the change we're making is to load that in chunks, loading a couple of files at a time. We've implemented the API also in 12.4 and are continuing to work on the interface changes needed to make this possible. So that will bring very meaningful performance improvements and scalability improvements in 12.5 when we ship those improvements to customers. Related to this is a change to how we cache the syntax highlighted diff. This was identified as part of the work and is quite significant. At the moment, when we request diffs from the server, we have to retrieve the diff for the entire merge request, throw away everything but the files we're interested in, and then send that in the API response. And this is very inefficient. It's very heavy on the server, and so we need to optimize this, particularly given the changes that we've made in the previous release. The next improvement also relates to the merge request interface, and it particularly relates to what happens when multiple people are working on the same merge request at the same time. So if I'm reviewing a merge request and about to click the merge button and someone else pushes a change, currently, the merge button grays out, which is good if we want to prevent the merge. And in some cases we do, but in other cases, I might have been the user that pushed the change and I wanted to push the change and then immediately click the merge button. One scenario where this is increasingly common is where people are using suggested changes. So if I leave a suggested change on a merge request, proposing to fix a typo in a code comment, or make one small little tweak, as the final reviewer of that merge request, I want to be able to accept those changes, which are tiny, and then click merge. If there's CI pipelines, it'll only merge if the pipeline succeeds, but I want to be able to just click accept and then click merge. And today that's not possible. So what this change will do is, rather than simply blocking the merge button, it'll show you the merge button, but give you a quick warning saying, oh, by the way, there are also some other changes. You might want to refresh the page to check them, or if you're expecting these, feel free to go ahead and merge anyway. So this will be a really nice improvement for those suggested changes workflows. And it's also a building block in a general shift in the merge request interface to make it more real time, so that when people are working together iterating really quickly because they're in the same time zone or even co-located in the same place, that merge requests can get merged even faster. And finally, the third major item that the source code group is going to be working on in the next development cycle is improvements to the navigation of merge requests. We've been doing a lot of UX studies about how we can improve the merge requests, addressing different areas. We looked at file-by-file navigation. We looked at code re-review workflows. We've been listening to customers in our customer calls that we do regularly. And one of the areas that keeps coming up is that the sub-navigation to move between the discussions tab, the commits tab, pipelines, and changes is really hard to find. If you write a detailed long description and you've got all the features turned on related to auto DevOps and CI, the sub-navigation is well below the fold of the page. So it's somewhere off the bottom and I've got to scroll to find it. And then if there's a lot of discussions, I might quickly end up in the discussions and have to scroll back up, searching, hunting for the sub-navigation to get to the changes. This is frequent feedback and really annoying. So one of the changes that we've been exploring and testing, and we've had very positive feedback from those tests, is to move the navigation above the description. And this will mean that it's easy to get to. As soon as you load the page, the sub-navigation will be visible and easy to click to get from A to B. The other element of this is also removing the merge request description and merge widget from the commits, pipelines, and changes tabs. What we've heard is when people are wanting to do a code review, they're wanting to look at just the code. They're really wanting to focus in and not be distracted. By having the merge widget and description above the changes tab, it makes the height of the page much longer and bigger than the actual useful area for that task. This means that if you quickly scroll to get to the top of the diff, you end up scrolling past the top of the changes and ending up in the description. This is really frustrating and annoying and takes away from the focus of being in one of these views. So based on the feedback and our testing, we're going to rename the discussions tab the overview tab or something like that. We will be listening to users and doing some testing during this release, moving the merge widget and description into that tab, and then keeping the commits, pipelines, and changes tab nice and focused. So we'll be excited to hear everyone's feedback when we launch this, and we'll be continuing to iterate on the merge request interface to really improve the usability, continue to improve the performance, and make GitLab the best tool for code reviews. And finally, I'd like to give an update on high availability for Gitaly. This is a project that we've been working on for a little while and still has a little while to go yet until it becomes generally available. But when an instance administrator or an organization is using GitLab in a self-hosted environment, so you're running your own GitLab server, GitLab is often really critical for the productivity of teams and businesses. If GitLab's down, you can't deploy a new version of your application. And so that could be really problematic if a serious vulnerability or bug comes up and GitLab's down. Suddenly you can't deploy. So high availability is really important. And so we want to make high availability work out of the box with GitLab. And so what we're doing is we're implementing support for this in Gitaly, which is how we scale Git inside of GitLab. And the first step that we've been working on is implementing a reverse proxy, which sits between Gitaly and the application. You can read more about Prefect, which is the name we've given the reverse proxy, in our documentation. But we've been working on a minimal implementation of that. And recently we shipped the first version of that into our staging environment. And for the 12.5 development cycle, our goal is to try and get that minimal Prefect reverse proxy into production. It won't be doing anything on gitlab.com. Hopefully it'll just sit there and work just fine. In the future iterations, we'll be adding more and more features to it, like replication and failover, which are really the key features in order to actually ship a high availability solution. But that's a quick update on our progress on high availability inside of Gitaly. Thanks for tuning in. Feel free to reach out, as always, on the message boards or on Twitter. But thanks for your time. Speak to you soon.